FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
We have this idea that perhaps with displeasure over the daily narrative of depression that comes out of Iraq, or maybe it's our complacence that nothing's really happened in a serious fashion since 9/11 here in the United States, there's a new strain of thinking that we are really not in a war against terror anymore. And I mean that literally. 2 weeks ago, the British government outlawed the use of the phrase war on terror, and they said it was counterproductive, irrelevant, and unnecessarily incendiary to the feelings of Muslims. Today, the U.S. military outlawed the word, I say outlaw, that's dramatic, but just put aside the word long war. They felt that the long war was a Manichaean idea, that we were in some type of Samuel Huntington clash of civilizations when we really weren't. I don't know if you saw the op-ed in the Washington Post 2 weeks ago by the former National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter's Mr. Szynski, but he said that the real danger is not the terrorists, but the war against the terrorists. That we have manufactured a non-existent threat into a real war that's depriving us of our civil liberties and alienating us across the globe. You should also remember that Francis Fukuyama in 1998 wrote a letter along with a group of other neoconservatives advocating a preemptive war on Saddam Hussein. Just recently wrote another piece now, 6 years later, saying after neoconservatism, when he said we're really not in a war, John Kerry was right, it was a nuisance, and the word war is the wrong metaphor. And so what we've seen coalescing after the bad news from Iraq is that we really don't have anything to worry about, and the war is essentially over, and those who believe it is not have certain agendas that they want to pursue at our expense. That's very wrong and deadly wrong for a number of reasons. Number one is that since 9/11, the U.S. State Department has cataloged 10 serious incidents that were broken up before they could come to fruition. Those were planned attacks in the United States against bridges, shopping malls, and other strategic targets like airliners. Just last week, British intelligence intercepted an Al-Qaeda transcript where they said they were aiming at a large-scale terrorist attack that would have the effect somewhat similar to Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That's probably exaggerated, but that's what the intelligence service intercepted. We should also, so the idea is that if we are alarmist and that alarmism has presented another attack, that's no reason not to be alarmist. It would be as if you were to say that because traffic deaths per miles driven have radically dropped with the advent of seatbelts and airbags and improved roads and body construction in cars, that therefore we don't need to do that anymore. And I will remind everybody that since automobiles hit the roads in the United States, we have lost about 7 times more people in auto accidents than we have in war. 3.2 million Americans have been killed since 1910 on our highways. So it's a staggering statistic. There's something else to remember why that's a wrong idea that we're not really in a war any longer, and that is that 9/11 was unique. It was really unique. Remember that the Wehrmacht, which often this criticism says these are not conventional worries like the Wehrmacht or the Japanese in World War II or the Soviets. The Wehrmacht was never able to destroy 20 acres in downtown Manhattan. Japanese militarists were never able to hit the Pentagon. For all of the 60 years of the Cold War, the Soviets were never able to inflict $500 billion on the U.S. economy in a single day. 9/11 was something unique, and I think most of us recognize that while we could withstand one of them, we could not withstand them in serial fashion. That they would so undermine the fabric of Western civilization that life as we know could not go on. Now some say, well, they really haven't changed our way of life. It's not just that every one of you who flew here had to change radically his behavior or her behavior since 9/11. And I mean that from the inconvenience of security, to be making your shoes come off, your belt come off, humiliating searches in some cases. You can't even bring toothpaste or shampoo on your carry-ons, but to the fundamentals of Western life. I don't think anybody 10 years ago would say that you couldn't write a novel again about Islam, or you would share the fate of Salman Rushdie. I didn't think anybody in postmodern Europe would ever dream that a cartoonist couldn't freely express themselves. I don't think anybody would ever believe that a German opera company would voluntarily censor their own production. I don't think anybody in the Netherlands would think that a filmmaker would have his throat cut for making a documentary film. I don't think anybody believed that a pope would have to be very careful that a statement he made about history 1,200 years ago might result in the deaths of people abroad. I don't think anybody in Newsweek dreamed that a single mistake in their funny little irreverent Periscope column about a flush Koran could lead to 16 deaths in rioting. So what I'm suggesting is that before we downplay this struggle as not a war, the jihadists already have achieved a curtailment of the Western Enlightenment that was a product of 600 years of struggle and sacrifice.